I usually would look at Matt,
Wow.
my co-producer, but I'm looking at you, and I can look at
Let's
Ryan.
go with the 23rd.
The 23rd, okay. Because I usually look at Matt, and he tells me what number it is. But Matt is not here tonight. He's not well. I mean, he's fine, but he's not here because he's not feeling well. Like he's not like ill in any serious sense. He just won't be here tonight. We do these things, the Selector series, which are modeled on jazz kisses, which is a Japanese thing where people sit around in bars and listen to records. And we've been doing that for a while now. The one thing that we always try to say about these things, if you haven't been, and I see new faces, is that it really does make a difference, I think, all of us sort of listening and being present. So please silence your phones, maybe even turn off your phones and put them away so that we can all sort of be here in the moment and listen to this cool record that our guest is going to talk about. Our guest, as we were just discussing, is from Hamilton, Maryland, USA. Mr. Tom Boram, aka Tom Borax, is an educator. He is a synthesist and collaborator with many local musicians in that guise, and a harpsichordist. And he put out a really awesome record earlier this year, late last year, earlier this year, which I think he has copies of if you're feeling squirrely, as my granny would have said. And it's really good. I know I'm, going to say that because he's standing here, but it is really good. Even if he wasn't standing here, I would say that. But he's been making music around Baltimore for a really long time, and I've always found him to be interesting and delightful. And so hopefully he will spread interest and delight all over us as he discusses his choice, which I will let him introduce.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so tonight I am going to present Kaleidoscopic Vibrations by Jean-Jacques Perrey and Gershon Kingsley. And it is my understanding, this could be argued, but it is my understanding that this is the first LP that ever featured the Moog synthesizer. Because it came out 1 year before Switched on Bach. And it came out, and at this time, people who were like luminaries of the Moog, such as Bruce Hock and Mort Garson, had not even acquired their Moogs at this point. So this is a pretty unique record, and I will say that it was probably marketed as a novelty record, and I will say that it was probably would fall into the sort of same genre where you would hear records by Martin Denny or Enoch Light, and then the sort of hi-fi. I think it was probably filed away for sort of hi-fi stereo listening. And then I think that the idea of the Moog, and this is just for some context, but a lot of you may be familiar with this, but you didn't really hear especially in popular music and rock music, you wouldn't really have heard the Moog until much later. So Gershon Kingsley himself was the Kingsley of Perrey Kingsley is the author of Popcorn, which some of you may know was the first I think charting hit that was all electronic, or the first song that was ever all electronic by Hot Butter. But it was written by Gershon Kingsley, and he put it on a record before Hot Butter did. Yeah. So anyway, so let me just give you some like background on them, because they're pretty interesting people. So I think at the time that this came out, they were very unhip. And I think this is actually a really psychedelic record. It has lots of echoes, tons of weird sounds. It's busy. It's very crazy. It's very insane sounding and intense. But it's also, kind of like a joke. It's sort of like a joke record. And one of the songs, The Savers, the first track, was used as the theme song for a game show in the 70s. And another one of the songs, Baroque Hoedown, which was written by Jean-Jacques Perrey, was used in Disney World. So it kind of sounds like, if you have to sort of go backwards and imagine what it would have sounded like in 67, because in 77, like public broadcasting, there was just synthesizers everywhere and like goofy stuff. And this almost sounds like a kindergarten, like that has been like exploded, or like, like the Smurf village has like been exploded or something. I mean, it's really over the top and crazy sounding. And as somebody who's works with analog synthesizers and has spent a lot of years, I build them, and I've been playing with them for about 25 years. It's a lot of work to like hand patch synths. And so the fact that they made all these sounds, it had to be done by hand, like patching it in and then recording. So they were sort of experts. And so I want to kind of get into who they were, because there's actually a lot of technical mastery on this, even though it sounds really silly. Perrey is French, and he was born in France before the war. And so during the war, he was a teenager, and he somehow survived the war. And in the 50s, his parents wanted him to be a doctor, but through his interest in the sciences, he heard about this proto synthesizer that was invented in France by a guy named Georges Génie, and it was called the ondioline, and they called it the Génie ondioline. And he got really interested in it, and he told Georges Génie that he couldn't afford one because he was a med student or something. And Georges Génie said, well, you can sell them and you can earn yourself an ondioline. And that's what he did. And he actually became a salesman, but he also had a lot of musical talent. So he would play the ondioline, and he would go and he would travel all around. And he ended up, people fell in love with him because he sold one to like, and it's like a who's who of French music. He sold one to Charles Trenet. He sold one to Edith Piaf. He knew Yves Montand. He performed. There's someone else too that was also Jacques Brel. He like performed on stage with Jacques Brel. So and they loved him. And apparently Edith Piaf thought he was like wonderful. And he looks like Dr. Benson Honeydew, by the way, from the Muppet Show. A lot, actually. So if you Google him later tonight, you'll see I'm not exaggerating. And so he through all this interest, he was just kind of like, everybody knew this guy, and he was kind of a great musician. And through his interest in science, he made some avant-garde albums. He made an album that was supposed to be for children, but it was like for children to go to sleep to. He did all this stuff, and then in Paris, and because of his interest in electronics, he became also friends with the famous avant-garde composer Pierre Schaeffer. And he spent some time studying at the GRM Music Institute in Paris, and he learned how to do tape splicing and make tape music. And so he would make these really complicated tape loops. And so in this music, you actually hear his tape loop mastery. There's some parts here where you hear these insane loops where they sound like and like all these kind of crazy sequences. That's all stuff that he would cut up tape by hand and paste them together and do all this stuff. So in this music, most of the Moog programming and the synthesizer programming is by Kingsley, but a lot of the tape loops and the really good playing, like the melodic playing and the sort of virtuoso keyboard playing, is Jean-Jacques Perrey. So Schaeffer, because of the avant-garde scene that was happening in New York at the time with John Cage, and musicians at the Columbia Princeton Music Center like Vladimir Ushashevsky and people like that, and of course the young Walter Carlos, now Wendy Carlos, Pierre Schaeffer encouraged Perrey to go to New York, where he met Kingsley. So Kingsley is also very interesting. He was born in Germany before the war, and when he was about 13 or 14, his parents fled because of the Kristallnacht, because they were Jewish, and his family, all but him, his family went to Cuba, where they were kind of like going to weather the war in Cuba because they were able to travel or get a visa to go to Cuba. But he went to Palestine, and he lived on a kibbutz. Even before 48 and before the creation of Israel, he left because he joined his parents in Cuba, and then they got a travel visa into New York. And so because he was musical, and while he was in Palestine, he studied music, and he was very talented as an arranger. So as soon as he got to New York, he started working as an arranger, and he was doing music in New York, working for TV and radio and all this stuff. And then he heard about the Moog, and he eventually became a Moog salesman and became friends with Bob Moog. So they were both selling synthesizers. So they're both synthesizer salesmen. So this record happens in '67. It's on the Vanguard label, and they met and they became fast friends, and they decided to do this record. And again, I think that it was probably marketed in a way for people who had like stereo systems and wanted to sort of show off their stereo systems. And it's kind of in that genre. Again, it's probably a novelty record. But you're going to hear all the sort of things because it displays a lot of really talented studio work and a lot of really in-depth studio work and layering, and you hear a lot of multi-tracking. They had some good musicians working in the studio, like studio quality musicians. So the drumming and the rhythm guitar is very competent, but pretty much except for the drums and a little bit of rhythm guitar, you hear everything's electronic. So it's an all electronic record. Way ahead of the curve in terms of that, because you start in rock music and popular music, you hear a little bit, like in 1969, there's a little bit of synthesizer on Abbey Road. And I think Mick Jagger did a Moog score in '69 for Kenneth Anger's Invocation of My Demon Brother. He bought a Moog, but you never would have heard it in the Rolling Stones music. He just, made this like sort of weird noise soundtrack for Kenneth Anger. So
best thing he ever did.
I agree. So let me see. So Mort Garson's Plantasia which is really famous. A lot of you guys might know that one. That doesn't come about until '74. Hot Butter's Popcorn doesn't chart until like '73. Giorgio Moroder and Donna Summer's I Feel Love, which was all electronic, that didn't hit the radio until '77. So this is a full decade earlier than that. Stevie Wonder has some synth, yeah, but that's probably like on Intervisions, probably. I think that's '74 too. You hear it a little bit in with Keith Emerson and stuff, but even that's still the '70s. So this is like 4 or 5 years before that. Just to give you a little preview of the tracks, and then we can get into it. Because of that era and because of this sort of genre of this style of record, it's mostly covers, and they're mostly sort of songs that were circulating in the popular repertoire at the time. So when you listen to these records, you always hear like European film themes, and Martin Denny and Herb Alpert and all these people are always going to be playing European film themes. And you hear two on this one. One is The Third Man. And then one is The Umbrellas of Cherbourg, who incidentally was composed by Michel Legrand. And for those of you who know Beach House, Michel Legrand's great niece is Victoria Legrand of Beach House. So there's The Umbrellas of Cherbourg and The Third Man, and then there's a couple Brazilian songs. So there's One Note Samba by Antonio Carlos Jobim, and then also Mais Que Nada, which is famous from the Sergio Mendes in Brazil '66. There's a cover of Strangers in the Night, made popular by Smoky Blue Eyes or whatever his name is. Let's see, what else do we have? There's a bunch of covers. I actually think that the Perrey and Kingsley songs are my favorites on here. Winchester Cathedral is like a British vaudeville song. And Moon River by Mancini and Johnny Mercer. So the rest of them are Perrey Kingsley originals, including the opener. And I just want you guys to savor this opening track. It's one of my favorite songs ever. So I've been playing in this electronic duo for about 25 years called Leprechaun Catering. And we are very maximalist and very electronic and just over the top, and all of our arrangements, everything we do just sounds, like it's tumbling over. And when I bought this record in the early years of us playing together, and we lived together for a while like the Monkees, and we like played music all day and recorded all day. And we listened to this record so much. And I bought this record as a new reissue of the original record. I bought this in 2001 or 2002, and it was a brand new reissue at the time. And it's just been one of my favorite records. It's a little hard to listen to, I think, a lot because it's just so. I just touched the mic. That's going to be really bumpy in the recording. it's kind of hard to listen to because it's so over the top, and it's in a way it's just so silly. So I think we'll enjoy it for one listening, but maybe like I call it queasy listening instead of easy listening, because it is in the easy listening genre, or it might have been filed that way. So anyway, hope you enjoy it. And for those of you who watched television in the 70s, you might recognize this first song. I can't remember the name of the game show because I was a little kid in the 70s and I didn't watch that much TV at the time. But this first song was a theme song for a game show. I can't remember which one though. Yeah, so let's do it. Oh, and then one more caveat on side two. On side two, there's 2 remixes at the very end, which I hate. They're like sort of techno dance mixes by these kind of like, I guess like DJ dorks that wanted to align themselves with Jean-Jacques Perrey when this record came out. So we're not allowed to listen to those. So I'm gonna.
Now you teased it. We kind of have.
I'm gonna pull the plug. I think I'm gonna pull the plug.
Can you play the Gabber version on the Flexi that came with the magazine?